So back in 2015, there was a game, Dying Light, that came out. And I remember at that time, there wasn't a lot that I particularly wanted to play. So I tried it out. And I really enjoyed it. I actually have said multiple times on multiple different outlets that I consider Dying Light the best zombie game that's ever made. And I've been looking forward to Dying Light 2 for the longest time. And I'm proud to say that I have played Dying Light 2, and you are watching the Dying Light 2 review from Lord Addict on the Xbox Series X. And before we get on with the review, definitely subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. We have weekly podcasts every 1 p.m. on Sundays called the Iron Lords Podcast. Don't forget to go there and follow me at Twitter at Lord Addict ILP. Without any further ado, here's my review on Dying Light 2. There for many years, I felt like zombie games was just everywhere. You couldn't get away from zombie games, from Dying Light to State of Decay, and you had Dead Rising. I don't know if you would technically consider Last of Us a zombie game, because I know that's kind of more of like a plant-like, if I remember correctly, but I would say that I would put that in the same genre, just maybe not the same exact thing as it comes to zombie. But the point of the matter is, I felt like these games was really pushing the envelope and nothing was doing anything special. And for the longest time, I've been waiting for Dying Light 2 because it's something that I really enjoyed when I played the first one, and I felt like it came up short when it came to a lot of other people, and I was really anticipating Techlands getting a second shot to really wow people. So let's start. The first thing you see when you boot up Dying Light 2, it's that graphics, what the game looks like, and I can actually firmly say that it's a huge step up from the first one. I actually thought Dying Light 1 looked pretty good, but they definitely hit it out of the park in terms of graphics for Dying Light 2. What I really always enjoyed about Dying Light is just the intensity that the map gives the gameplay, because when you go out at night, everything is just way extra, and it's just like that with the sound, man. You guys gotta really take in when you play this game and you're in these very dark areas at night and the sound of the zombies just screaming. Sometimes you'll be in buildings and you'll just hear random screams for no reason. I do feel like that's a little bit too much sometimes, because there will be incidences where I feel like it's just in the walls and they don't really intend on you finding the source to the sound. They just want to really amplify the intensity of that moment with the sound, and I don't really like that too much. I feel like if you do that again, just make sure that there's a source to it. There was a couple times where I actually looked for what was screaming and I could not find it, but maybe that was just me and my impatient self couldn't find it, because you know that's how I am, man. I'm not gonna sit there and look too long. I get my interest, my curiosity goes off, I look for it, and if I can't find it, I just dip, because that's just the person I am. I think a lot of you are gonna really appreciate the different type of parts of the map. Now, there isn't really necessarily like a snowy part of the map or anything like that. For the most part, everything's identical, but there are parts of the map that's hazardous that just look really nice on the eyes, especially when it comes off the sun. There's a lot of incidences where there'll be a lot of explosions and stuff going on, and you see the clear damage that it's doing to the city, and there'll be smoke everywhere. I feel like they did really good job with this. Now, as far as saying it's like next gen level, obviously this is a previous gen game, so you can't really say it's a next gen level. I do feel like it's definitely above average in terms of graphics, but I wouldn't go above and say this is extremely good on the eyes. It's just a nice looking game, and I think it passes that part for me, at least. On to the story. Dying Light 2 doesn't have a phenomenal story. It's kind of an average. You can tell exactly what's going to happen. There's nothing really defining about this story. I wouldn't say there's going to be any part of this that makes people feel like it is above average in terms of storytelling. But one thing Dying Light 2 does well is the characters in the game. Sure, there are a lot of incidences where I felt like the main character was lacking, and they could have done a lot better in terms of building that character to where you actually understood his concerns. Like, I knew what was going on with the main character, but I didn't exactly agree with how they carried it, how they executed it. Like, I could sense the emotion in the main character, but it never felt to the point where I'm like, man, I sympathize with him, I feel bad for him. I've kind of felt that way more towards the other characters of the game. I think they did them extremely well. When you come across some of these characters, I found myself sympathizing with the side characters and the other people that's not the main character more than I did the main main character. And the funny thing about the story is Dying Light 2 kind of takes place on one of those, I gotta rescue someone. And that's what pretty much the whole story's about, is the main character rescuing a certain person. And I found myself caring more about the scenarios that these other people are in more than actually looking for the person that the main character wanted to look for. And I think that's a really good thing of doing writing wise. And when it comes to certain choices in the game, I wasn't even really caring about that person. I was like, what is it going to affect the people that I like? Sure, it might not necessarily been the main character, because I didn't really feel like they did a lot in terms of executing me sympathizing with him, like I said. And I didn't really care about his struggles. I cared more about the people he's helping. And I think that's a funny thing, and I've not really experienced that too many times in game. But you know, take that how you feel. I do feel like that might be a double-edged sword, that I don't know exactly how you guys will take that. I don't want to act like the main character is Blaine and he's not interesting. He is an interesting character, but I feel like compared to the rest of the game, he falls short. Now, you guys know gameplay is my all-time favorite when it comes to attributes on an actual game. I feel like the story's important and the graphics of the game is important, but when it comes to that gameplay isn't fun. I'm not going to care about the other ones. I'm happy to say that Dying Light 2 hits that out of the park. You have two huge, decent-sized areas to be a playground of your parkourness. And what I mean by that is this is one of the very few games that I do feel like is a Dying Light 2 moment kind of game, where there's scenarios that happen in this game where after you do it, you're like, man, that can only happen in Dying Light. And I really enjoyed that. They do kind of bit off a little bit of Ubisoft mechanics. Now, I can't remember exactly if these were in Dying Light 1 because it's been so long since I played it, but they got that standard, we're gonna climb something and activate it thing. Now that's not really necessarily saying anything bad about it, but I, for one, am tired of those type of mechanics, and I would like to go away from them and find more unique ways of filling out a map than just climbing something and activating something. But I guess until we find a better way as an industry, we're going to be dealing with these whack buildings or whack towers that we have to climb. And it's like I said, it's not necessarily saying it's bad, it's just, come on, man, let's find something better. All right, let's talk about the character development. You got a pre-set up character. You can't really make anything. There's not like any kind of character customization where you can make the main character any way you want. The main character's name is Aiden, and he looks that way regardless. But what you can do is get certain abilities to make him unique. You have a tree with fighting and a tree with parkour. And let me tell you guys something. The parkour tree was great. And there was a lot of times where I was actually debating what tree I wanted to invest to at that moment, because what Dying Light 2 does well is it makes it to where you do have to fight at certain points and you really want to invest in parkouring at certain points. There will be certain parts of the map that you have to do that's story related, to where there's multiple ways of doing it. And if you have a better parkour tree, you can do it a lot easier than if you would have just invested in the combat. You might have to climb more stuff, or it sometimes put yourself in really intense situations and hope that you don't fall to your death because you didn't invest into that parkour tree system. At the beginning of this game, the fighting system's pretty bland and it's pretty basic, but once you upgrade that combat system a good amount, there is a lot of perks that make it more fluid. You'll seem to enjoy it a lot more. Now, I will say at the beginning, I was more about running from situations and not necessarily fighting, but once you unlock a good amount of those upgrade skills, you feel more in control of your character during a fight. And the interesting part is they actually have multiple kind of playing styles. So if your play style is more of getting in your face, cutting zombies heads off, or you know, just pretty much running from everything, you can do that. I like a lot of the objects and stuff that they have in this game. They have infected knives that when you throw them at actual people, they will turn into infected. And that's really unique, because what you can do is, if you don't want a lot of conflict at a certain situation because there's a lot of people there, you can throw one of these infected knives or an infected arrow. It will turn them and they'll actually turn on the other people there. And you can use that to take out bigger targets that are a lot more hard for you as a character to take them down. And I think that's interesting. Not to mention there's actually more infected. There's a lot more emphasis on running at night. I feel like the night gameplay on this is a lot better than it was in Dying Light 1, but I do feel like it needed to be more intense than it was in this game. And what I mean by that is I want Dying Light's night gameplay, because that's supposed to be the most most dangerous time to play Dying Light. And I feel like that's what separates it from other zombie type like games. And I don't think that they go as far. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I feel like what they need to do is it needs to be one of those things where it doesn't matter if you're on the rooftops. It doesn't matter if you're running through the streets. These zombies will come after you. Now, they do have incidences where if you come across certain key point zombies, they will initiate what's called a chase. And it's pretty much just one of the zombies screaming, and it's alerting the rest of the zombies that you're there. But the thing is I never one time in this game felt like I was in danger at night. Sure, I would die occasionally on this game, and I died a lot in terms of judging a fall and not judging it correctly, and I would die from fall damage. I never really died too many times on actual zombies, and I feel like considering this is a zombie game, I'm tired of these companies not putting enough fear on the zombies. It kind of feels like that point in The Walking Dead where zombies is like a real key point at the beginning of the series, but then when you get closer to the end of the series or later on in the show, it turns out that zombies isn't the main problem, it's humans. And I feel like you're going to embrace that the majority of the time in a zombie apocalypse thing, but I feel like you can do both. You don't have to do just one. You can make the zombies aggressive, you can make the zombies more effective and more scary, and you can also make the humans be the divining, pathetic creatures that they are at some points of the game. You could easily do both, and I always felt like, especially in Dying Light 2, when you get more of these abilities, the zombies aren't even an issue anymore. You could run from the majority of them, and I want that to change. I felt like, you know, when a zombie grabs you, it should be a rat, but it's not like that. It's, you know, for the most part, you can have abilities where you can jump on the zombies to get more of the air. You can get on the rooftops relatively easy. Now, there are zombies on the rooftops, but there's not a lot. So as long as you stick on the roofs, you'll be fine. They're, for the most part, are never going to get to you up there. Now, if you initiate a chase and you run on the rooftops, they will most definitely chase you anywhere you go. But to be honest with you guys, even the chases are not that bad, because when you do outpost, you get these UV lights that's on the actual outpost, and for the most part, if you run into a chase or you initiate a chase, it's literally just you either bringing up the map and finding the next outpost that's nearest to you, which sometimes can be a bother, especially if you're on the ground and you activate one of these, because that means a lot of the times you're going to be climbing a lot of stuff. And keep in mind, these zombies will climb with you, and some of them are actually faster than you, so you can't just straight up bolt and get away from them. But I feel like it was defeated for the most part, because sometimes you would have to go to these weird positions to get to a UV light. But as you unlock more faction buildings and as you unlock more outposts, it was literally just looking around, finding one relatively close and getting to it, and the chase would be ended almost immediately when you got into the UV light. And I feel like they could have handled that better, maybe depending on the power level of the actual zombies. I do feel like they should be able to overpower the UV lights if there's a bunch of them and kill everybody in that settlement, and you have to re-establish that settlement, or have some kind of consequences for initiating chases that you can easily get rid of. Now, I want to say that this game marketed a lot of special features in it to where if you side with a certain faction, you have a certain outcome. And I'm not saying that they didn't kind of false advertise it, but I am saying that it's not as a big difference as a lot of you would like. I felt like for the most part, it might change some dialogue, but it doesn't change anything drastically in terms of how the world is built. Maybe it will change the ending, because I only beat the game one time. I didn't really experiment a lot with beating the game multiple times, but the time I did beat it, I did like the way the story played out and the way the story was changing on my actual decisions. But I felt like the world itself wasn't really evolving too much. What I do like is there will be certain buildings that are key components in the world map, and when you take them over, you can assign it to either the peacekeepers or the survivors. And every time you do this, because there's like good 10 times you could do this on each side, they'll give you a bonus perk to being on that side. And I really enjoyed that, because if you went to the survivors the way I went, it kind of went more towards the parkour system, and I felt like if you went towards the peacekeepers, it went more towards surviving at night. And the reason I went for the survivor trees, because I personally feel like the night system in this game is flawed and you could easily stay alive. So it wasn't really one of those incidences where I was ever fearful that I needed any kind of perks to stay alive. And I don't want to come out like really harsh in terms of how they did the faction system in this game, but when I will see faction system, I see like Fallout New Vegas, to where when you mess with one faction that doesn't like that faction, their enemies are your enemies, and I never got that in this game. I wanted it to be where if I paired with their enemy, not necessarily their enemy, they don't really ever come out openly say they got beef with each other, but pairing with one side and siding with one side is going to naturally make the other side mad. And I always wanted that incidence where when I played Fallout New Vegas and I came across a faction that I have consistently ignored and did by them wrong, I wanted that faction to be kind of, it's on sight, where if you go across those at all, they're on you. And I never felt that in Dying Light 2. And that's something they definitely can improve on, maybe in a patch, or maybe, you know, whenever they do another one, maybe 2028, the way it took to do Dying Light 2. I'm not saying that it's like a huge minus, but I will say that that's something that I personally was disappointed with. But as far as the faction system in terms of story, like I did like how they do that, but it's just the world building I wanted to change. But the key factor in Dying Light 2, and I think the biggest thing that they always advertise when it comes to playing this game is it's a survival zombie apocalypse that you can parkour anywhere you want to go, and it does that effectively. It does that very well. I feel like when you max out or close to max out that parkour tree system, anything is a go. You could do anything you want to do. If you feel like an objective is too hard to climb, you could climb that. It's just how you want to do it and whether or not that skill tree is up to par with the complications that you're putting in place to do it. And I really enjoyed that. You know, Techlands really does this well that I don't really see a lot of other developers effectively doing in 2022. And that's the movement of the character. And besides Spider-Man, where you felt like the movement was such a highlight of the game, I can't really tell you another game where I felt like I had so much freedom in just how I move around the map. And I gotta really tip my hat off when it comes to Techland in that kind of scenario. Now let's talk about the really, really bad. This game has a lot of bugs. Now, I will say that the bugs were never to the point where I'm just like, I'm done. I'm not playing this. I'm uninstalling this game. But I will say when they happen, I was annoyed. And there's a lot of incidences where there was this weird sound that went on. It was kind of audio glitch. There was incidences to where it felt like an objective wasn't triggered when I did it, so I'd have to reboot the game and do it again. Now, if you are okay with having a lot of inconveniences, because that's what I would consider these glitches, inconveniences. Something like Cyberpunk, there was a lot of game-breaking stuff to where it was annoying and you couldn't really see yourself finishing the game, and that's why I uninstalled that game. But when it comes to Dying Light, it's a lot of inconveniences in terms of the glitches. You could easily play this game the way it is now, but I would recommend you waiting. Don't play this game until they have that patch and fixing it. Now, if you really enjoyed Dying Light 1 and you wanted a similar experience and you don't want to wait for the patches, it's easily able to be done. You could play this the state that the game's in now, like I said, but be prepared to climb towers multiple times. Be prepared to get killed because the mission doesn't accelerate the way it's supposed to because it glitches and the game doesn't register you're in places where you're supposed to be. Be prepared to be very annoyed throughout the game because there's certain scenarios to where it's just not happening. However, like I said, even with all these inconveniences and these glitches that annoyed me, I enjoyed every bit of this game, and I do feel like once they get these bugs fixed, it's going to be worth the money. Now, whether or not you want to reward them for releasing a buggy game, which I don't feel like we should reward them at all, I don't blame you for waiting. Maybe in the future it comes to like a subscription service like Game Pass or PlayStation Now, or maybe just waiting for this game to be $20, $30 cheaper and buying it then, because at the end of the day, as much as I am for devs, I don't want to reward bad behavior. And a lot of the times it's not the developer's fault. It's the publisher that actually funded the project. I don't know if Techland funded and published the game itself. I don't know if they have any many backers that's pushing this game out before it's ready, because I do think that this should have been in the oven for another 6 months to really give us a quality product. And I'm pretty sure the reviews are going to reflect these glitches, because it's like I said, these glitches was an inconvenience to me. I never stopped playing it, but I can see why after about the third or fourth tower, you have to do them twice. And some of these towers are very difficult to climb on certain scenarios if you don't have a certain parkour skill. And I can totally see why someone would just drop the game and say, I'm done. I've tried it. It's not working. But that's just my opinion on the matter. Look, now if you guys want to go out there and still play it, I would recommend Googling the latest patch for Dying Light 2 and see if some of these issues that I have put up have been remedied and have been fixed. And if they haven't, I would say wait. But if you guys want to jump in this zombie apocalypse, I don't blame you. Go ahead and do it. But I would recommend waiting until they're fixed. But anyway, tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. Like I said, I think the graphics they look great. They don't nothing special, but it's definitely something that is acceptable in 2022. I think the gameplay is fantastic. The story is okay. It's not anything special, but it's definitely something that I enjoyed as it unfolded. And I think that when it comes to if you should buy Dying Light 2, you know, if you want to go out there and buy it because it's something that you really enjoyed with Dying Light 1 and you don't want to wait, then I totally understand. But I would wait. I would wait till these bugs are fixed where you actually have a very quality product playing. There's not a whole lot of issues while you're booting it up. Keep in mind, I didn't play this on the PS5. I didn't play this on the PC. I don't know the conditions of these ports, and I can only speak for my experience and the issues that I had playing it, but I enjoyed it. And until next time, this is Lord Addict, and you just listened and watched the review of Dying Light 2. Peace.